Hey, family, my name's Amanda Brown. I'm a grateful alcoholic. By the grace of God, I'm sober today. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be at your meeting this evening. Thank you so much, Stephen, for asking me to speak. I just love you to death. When we see people across our rooms, some of them just have that light, and you just know they have the spirit of Alcoholics Anonymous in them. And Stephen certainly has that. And I thank you so much for asking me to speak. When Stephen asked me to speak, he did not know, nor I knew what was going to be going on in my life today. But by the God of my experience did. I will share with y'all. I've been crying since about 5:30 this morning. I moved my last child to college today. So it has been an emotional day. And what I told my sponsor was, thank God I get to be of service this evening because I need the distraction, right? So thank you so much for allowing me to be with all of you. Thank you so much for those of you that are brave enough to put your face on that screen. It is really hard to talk to little black squares. So I really appreciate all of you showing your face. My sobriety date is May 19th, 1991. I'm very grateful to have over 32 years of continuous sobriety. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. I work with alcoholics. My home group is the Legacies group here in Montgomery, Alabama. I'm in the middle of the state. And I'm just grateful today. I'm grateful for Zoom. I'm grateful for Stephen. I'm grateful that our Creator found a way for all of us to keep connected in the middle of a pandemic. So I had asked Stephen, I said, remind me the last time I spoke, what year was it? And he said it was 2020. And I asked him, I said, well, was it before or after February 9th? And he said, well, it was after. Why? And I said, because that's the day my father passed away. Because you see, what happened was I got asked to speak right after he had passed away, and we had just got in lockdown, and I could not get through that talk on Zoom. You see, I did not realize that from my very first memory, my father was such a huge part of my story. And so when I began to share right after he had passed, I could not get through that. I mean, like, it was awful, like ugly cry, snot, mascara. It was awful, right? It was a horrible experience. And I don't know about the people that were there. I guess I was sharing that even in the middle of death, we can still get through it, right? But I had a conversation with God after that. I said, look at here now. So I can't be doing that. You know, I told you when you got me sober that wherever you lead, I will go. But we got to do something different. I really would like to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope without snot and mascara running and all of that. I said, can we please do this different? So the next time I shared, it was completely different. Now look, y'all, I pee and I pray, right? I really try to open myself to be a vessel to whatever the God of my experience wants me to share. 32 years of sobriety, that's a lot of life, that's a lot of joy, that's a lot of grief, okay? And the God of my experience knows who's in these rooms better than I do, right? And so God pulls out the stories that he wants me to share because he knows who needs to hear what in these little squares, right? So when I got done sharing that evening, I was like, oh, well, that went really well. I enjoyed that, talking to God, right? And so what he had me do was he had me tell my story, but it's just a little bit different. And he had me share my story using the 12 steps. So that's what I feel led to do this evening. You will still hear what I was like and what happened and what life is like now. But it might be just a little bit different. Okay. So the first step says I was powerless over alcohol and my life was unmanageable. Well, was that true for me? Let's see. I had my first conscious drink of alcohol when I was 12 years old. My friend had a beach house down at the beach, and he had taken a bunch of us down there, and his dad was going around taking everybody's drink orders. And so my best friend said, well, I'll have a 6-pack of peach wine coolers. And I said, well, that sounds good to me. I think I'll have one too. His daddy ran off and got everybody's alcohol, came back, I drank every single one of those peach wine coolers and proceeded to have the best night's sleep of my little life. Alcohol immediately did for me what I could not do for myself. Now, today I know I had my first blackout, right? But that's not the way I perceived it in that moment. What I perceived was I was able to go to sleep and sleep through the night. Because you see, in my little life, excuse me, I would lay in bed at night and I would worry. And oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Where are we going to live? Who's mama going to marry now? Now she's getting another divorce. What's going to happen? Me, my people, all the voices in my head, right? And they never would shut up. So when I had that first 6-pack of those peach wine coolers, all the voices shut up. Alcohol immediately did for me what I could not do for myself. Now, do I believe that I became an alcoholic at that moment? I don't know, but I'll tell you what, every moment after that, I'm looking for it. Who's got it? How much can I get? What am I going to have to do to get it? How long is it going to last? All of the above, right? I was stealing liquor out of my Meemaw's liquor cabinet. They were retired military. She always had alcohol in the house. I would get a Sprite bottle, one of those plastic 20-ounce bottles, and I would pour the Sprite out, and I'd go in her cabinet and I'd fill that bad boy up with my Bacardi 151 rum. That was my drink of choice. And we'd be sitting there at the table having dinner, and they think I'm drinking a Sprite, and I'm already trying one on, right? I came from a small town in South Alabama. There was always a field party. I lived out in the country. My favorite aunts and uncles drank. I marched in the high school band. There was always a band party, and my disease progressed, right? My best friends, I only had friends where their parents drank or they drank. My disease progressed. Then I got to go to the university I've always wanted to go to. And I marched in their marching band, the $1 Million Band. And I had 415 brand new best friends. Well, Thursday night was the band practice party. Friday night was the party before the game. Saturday, I'm either celebrating or commiserating. Either way, I'm getting drunk. Sunday was pro football and my disease progressed, right? So on February 19th, 1991, that was an important day in my little life. That was the day that my big mama died. Now, my big mama was my great grandmother. She helped raise me. And when she died, I felt like that was the one somebody who unconditionally loved me, right? It didn't matter if I made a C in school. It didn't matter if I had wrecked mama's car trying to sneak and see my boyfriend. I was going to go in her house and she was going to hug me and tell me she loved me and make me my favorite macaroni and cheese with that welfare cheese and that Conecuh sausage, and all was right with the world, right? I remember that morning getting that phone call, and I had not been in very long, and I was too drunk to drive to the bottom of the state. I was living at the top of the state. So a girlfriend of mine drove me home, and I remember telling her in the car, I said, you know what? I can still see that Southern Baptist preacher up there slamming that Bible on that pulpit, telling me that to think the sin was just as bad as doing the sin, and I was going to hell. Well, let me see how fast I can get there. So the next 100 some odd days, I don't have any memories except for 4. I was a blackout drinker from the get-go, had no contact with my mother, my grandmother in those 100 some odd days. And I have 4 memories. My sponsor calls them snapshots. And I believe that the reason why the God of my experience has allowed me to keep those memories is to remind me how far down the scale that I had gone, right? So the first memory I have is I come to and I'm in a concrete stairwell. And my head is hanging over one of those big square black industrial trash cans. And I'm covered in vomit, puke, pee, poop, blood. I have no idea where I am or how I got there. The second memory I have is I come to and I'm in a bedroom and I'm in a bed and I have no idea who that is laying beside me. And I'm checking the empties on the nightstand, right? Is there anything left? And then I'm going in the bathroom and I open up the medicine cabinet and I'm looking for anything with alcohol content, right? Listerine, mouthwash, cough syrup, cologne, perfume, NyQuil, Dayquil, whatever. Is there anything in there? And then I'm walking in the kitchen and I'm praying they've got the real vanilla extract and not the imitation. My third memory is I come to and it's loud and there's all these lights and so much noise and my back is being scraped and oh God, that hurts. And come to find out, there's an 8-lane highway in that town, and I have laid down in front of oncoming traffic to take a nap. And my friends have me by the ankles, and it's headlights and car horns, and they have me by the ankles trying to pull me out of the highway. And the last memory I have is I'm standing in a college bar, and there's a band up there playing, and we're all standing down here doing that college dance where you just kind of stand there and bob your head. And I got a cigarette in this hand and a Miller Lite long neck in this hand, and I proceed to crap all in my pants. And I take a puff and I take a swig. Rock on. That's where alcohol had taken me, right? Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. So on May 18th, there was a knock at my door, and I will tell you, I was extremely paranoid. I had not been in very long, because part of my disease was, even after I would get some alcohol in me, I would still want to feel better, right? And so what that looked like for me was I would want to spend money. I would want to go shopping. So I might buy me a whole new wardrobe, or I might buy you a whole new wardrobe. And I was just spending money right and left. And let me tell you now, selfish and self-centered, I'm an only child. I'm the first grandchild on both sides. And I'm the first great grandchild on both sides. Selfish and self-centered is an understatement. My world did revolve around me, right? So I'm going out and spending all this money. Well, it never occurred to me that just because there was checks left in the checkbook, there might not be money in that account to back that up. So I was writing hot checks all over the place. And in that apartment complex that I was staying at, they had these little mailboxes, and flowing out of that mailbox were these long brown official looking envelopes that said federal government and my name on there. Now, I don't know what kind of alcoholic you are, but I'm the kind where if I don't look at it and I don't touch it, it ain't real, right? So I just left those envelopes flowing out of the mailbox. So when that knock happened on the door, I thought it was the police. And I opened the door, and one of my mother's best friends is standing there. And she hollers down the walkway, Angie, she's here. And my mother comes running down the walkway, and she hugs me, and she tells me she loves me, and it's going to be okay. She said, Amanda, I don't know what's going on with you. She said, but clearly something's going on. She said, now, we can go have lunch, and I will tell you that I love you, and I will go home. She said, or you can decide to get some help. So her and one of her best friends left, and she gave me 2 hours to make the decision. The other best friend stayed there with me. And I told her I might have written a few bad checks. Now, keep in mind, my mother had no communication with me in over 3 months. They had no idea what was going on. So the best friend calls a lawyer friend of the family, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the conversation, and I could tell this was not going to be good for me. Right? I could tell by that tone. So by the time she got off the phone and Mama got back, yes, Mama, I want some help. So we loaded everything up, got that U-Haul, drove to my hometown, got about 2 hours sleep. May 19th, the next day at 9 a.m., I was at the very bottom of the state at Providence Hospital in Mobile, Alabama, on the 10th floor. In a facility there. And I will never forget the sound of those doors closing behind me. Now, let me tell you something. May 18th, I'm over here going, yes, Mama, I want some help, right? May 19th, on the way to Mobile to that hospital, I'm pulling off my acrylic fingernails and I'm telling my mama I'm going to go back to Tuscaloosa, right? Forgot the pain of a few 24 hours ago. Now, I was in that facility for 60 days, and some things happened while I was in there. One of the things that happened was we're doing these group sessions, and we're having to see a psychiatrist, and I told him I might have drank a little bit. Well, unbeknownst to me, he was a recovering alcoholic. And he saw in me, recognized in me what he had recognized in himself. And he started sending me to those AA meetings. Now, let me tell you, I was young, I was cute. I did not look like the people in those rooms. They were all old, they were crusty, they wanted to shake my hand, they wanted to hug me. And I'm like, I don't know these people. What? Right? And I would sit in the very back of the room and I would hide behind my hair. And because I didn't know what they wanted from me. And all I could hear was the differences, right? Well, he drank from a brown paper bag. Well, and let me say this, all those differences were technicalities, right? Well, I never drank from a brown paper bag in a condescending way. Okay, Amanda, but were you over here drinking out of empties and looking in the for Listerine and what? Yeah. Well, he slept under a bridge. I never slept under a bridge. You don't know where you slept. You lived in a blackout. You woke up in a concrete stairwell. For all you know, you could have slept under a bridge, right? Then one day they took us to a speaker meeting down there at the Alano Club, and a young lady got up there and she told my story. She was young. She was pretty. She probably had a shower. She probably was wearing underwear. Clearly, she had brushed her teeth, right? Things that were not normally a priority for me necessarily. She was talking about how she was raised. She'd kind of grown up like I did. She'd done some things like I had done. She drank like I did. And today she's telling me that she's sober. And she's telling me that she's happy. And she looks happy. And for the first time, my ears popped open, because if she's saying that she's an alcoholic, could I be an alcoholic? Could that be what's going on with me? And for that first day, it opened my ears, and I began to listen to the similarities, and I had some hope, right? My hopeless state had been relieved. I began to have some hope. And so I sat in those meetings with a different mindset. And I will tell you, our details may be different, but in my experience, if I talk about the feelings that I've had and feeling different and the feeling of not being right in my skin, there's not a person on the screen who doesn't know what that feels like, right? So that day my ears opened up, and when I left that facility, I didn't know where I was going. You see, my mother had gathered up all those brown official looking documents that said federal government, and she had gone to the lawyer. So I didn't know when I left there if I was going to be going to jail or prison or what. What I did know was the least amount of time I was looking at was 15 years at the women's prison, not far from where I live now. So when I come out of that facility, my mother's standing there in the parking lot next to her car, and she's got an official looking document. And it says tit for tat things all the way down. Like, she's going to let me live with her. I got to pay $200 a month rent. She's going to let me stay there. I got to get a job. She's going to let me use her car, but I got to put gas in it and keep it clean. She's going to buy the groceries. I got to cook 2 meals out of the week. Neither one of us agreed can have men over, all the way down, right? And at the bottom, it said that she had went and paid all the bad checks and fees to the tune of $10,000, and that I had 10 years to pay that off, or I would have to finish my time. Now I will skip ahead and tell you, I was very grateful at 8.5 years sober, I was able to finish making that financial amend. So I had a choice in that moment: prison, live with my mama. Let me think about that a minute. I did sign that contract, and I went and lived with my mother, and I began to attend my very first outside of the facility AA meeting. My first home group was the Level Plains home group outside of Enterprise, Alabama. I can still remember the first night I walked in and where everybody was seated. And over here, there was a little bitty short lady with blonde curly hair and glasses, and there was an empty seat. And then there was a little bitty blonde curly-headed short lady, and the first lady with the glasses patted that seat, and she said, "Here, honey, come sit by me." Now, that was my sponsor to my right and my grand sponsor to my left. How do I know? Because the woman told me after the meeting that she was my sponsor. And then she told me something that I never will forget. She said, "Amanda, I want to tell you something. You never have to take another drink of alcohol ever again if you don't want to. And we're going to try to help you not to want to." And she gave me that big book, and excuse me, she knew that I loved analogies, and she took me to the doctor's opinion, where I learned that I wasn't just a bad person, right? That I had the physical allergy, just like somebody who's allergic to strawberries, right? That I have the mental obsession. I cannot let go of something. It will sit here and go and go and go and go, right? And that I have that spiritual malady. And that doctor's opinion really, oh my God, what a lifesaver to know that I wasn't just a bad person. She said, "Amanda, look, if you were told that you were eat up with cancer, and tomorrow down at the CVS, they were going to be given little blue pills that were going to cure your cancer, would you go?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I'm going to be first in line." She said, "Okay, you have the disease of alcoholism, And this is your little blue pill. Now look, this has got a fancy cover on it, but this is our basic text, Alcoholics Anonymous. And she said, in here is your spiritual program of action. That's going to tell you how to live if you choose to, right? So could I see that I was powerless over alcohol and my life had become unmanageable? Absolutely. So then we get to the second step. And I will tell you, I was not a fan of the second step. I did not want to do the second step. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was angry at God. I had that hellfire and brimstone God. I was angry at him. He was angry at me. And God had never done anything for me except take away the people that I love, right? So we get to the official second step in the book. And she had me doing exercise. And she said, okay. She got a yellow legal pad. And I had to draw a line down the middle. She said, now, on this left side, we're going to write down all the qualities you think about God today, and I want you to give it a name. Okay. Zeus, hateful, mean, vengeful, unforgiving, unkind, unloving, lightning rods, all those kind of words, right? She said, now, on this right side piece of paper, I want you to write down the qualities you would like for God to have. Give it a name. I said, okay, Santa Claus. Happy, joyous, free, kind, sweet, loving, gentle, sense of humor, all those kind of words, right? So she had me cut that piece of paper down the middle. We tore up that left side and we burned it. And that was letting go of those old ideas. She said, now I want you to take that right side piece of paper and I want you to tape it on your bathroom mirror. And that's the God I want you to start praying to. Because you see, up until that point, my sponsor had wanted me to pray and I was not willing to pray to a concept that I had come up with yet, right? And I remember Gloria saying, well, Amanda, do you believe that I believe in God? And I said, well, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, would you be willing to pray to my God? And I said, yes, ma'am. So up until that point, my prayers were, thank you, Gloria's God, for waking me up this morning. Gloria's God, please keep me sober today. Thank you, Gloria's God, for keeping me sober today. Gloria's God, please watch me through the night, right? So when I put that list on that bathroom mirror, that's the God that I started praying to. And I will tell you that exercise in the little black book, Daily Reflections wasn't really out yet, were the two most important things that helped me get a relationship with the Creator that I was willing to then turn my life over, abandon myself to, right? So we get to step 3. And I remember the first time we did step 3 in that clubhouse, yes, we got on our knees on that nasty carpet, holding hands across that broke down chair and said the 3rd step prayer, right? Now, I will tell you, I thought that was it for a lot, right? For a lot of time, because I would save that prayer. I would save it for big stuff, right? I wasn't saying that every day. Why would you want to waste a 3rd step prayer on that, right? I also never liked the analogy of the 3 frogs on a log. I can't stand that. Ralph W. in California, he put it in a way that I could understand when I heard him speak one time. He said, look, we get to step 3, we're making a deal. We said, okay, God, I've done what you've asked and you've got me sober. And I tell you what, I'm going to continue this, steps 4 through 12. And when I get to that end, I'm going to go tell everybody how you saved my life through this spiritual program of action as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to make that deal with you today. Well, see, now that I can understand, right? I understand making that deal. And what I know today after all these years is I believe the 3rd step prayer is one of the most underused tools in our spiritual toolkit. And I'll tell you why. Years ago, I learned that I could put any person, place, thing, situation, or institution in that 3rd step prayer, surrendering it to God, and then turn my thoughts to someone I can help, right? What I know today is the God of my experience is a gentleman. He doesn't reach down and take anything from me. I have to surrender it, right? So for many years, the relationship with my mother was a struggle. I would put my mother in the 3rd step prayer. God, I offer my mama to thee, to build with her and do with her as thy will. Relieve her of the bondage of self, that she may better do thy will. Take away her difficulties, that victory over them may be a witness of those that she would help of thy love, thy power, and thy way of life. Right? Okay. When my father was dying of liver cancer, God, I offer Slim to thee, to build with him and do with him as thy will. Right? When we were trying to decide where to send our children to school, God, I offer my children's schooling to thee, to build with it and do with it as thy will. Relieve it of the bondage of self. And every time I do, put whoever, whatever in that prayer, surrendering it to God, then my next thing is, how can I be of service? How can I be of service? How can I be of service? Right? Now, if you're one of mine, or in my lineage, you have what we call evidence journals. We keep up with the people, places, things, situations, institutions that we have put in the third step prayer and how it was resolved. Okay. Now, and because it's real, it really does happen. Now, it's not just a one and done thing. Like, I can't just pray for my daughter in the morning and that be it. If I'm surrendering her, then what that means is every time she crosses my mind throughout the day, I put her back in the third step prayer, because that, in my experience, that's my ego trying to take it back, right? So I want to give you one of my favorite examples. So this woman in long-term sobriety came to me. She wanted me to sponsor her. I said yes. And we had not been working together very long, but she had this woman at work that was her nemesis, right? Like, oh my God. So we tried some different things and nothing was working. My sponsee would not, she could not get this woman out of her mind. And so I told her, okay, we're going to put her in a third step prayer. Told her how we were going to do it. Told her, look, this doesn't mean you just put her in there first thing in the morning. You got to do it all day long. You surrender her back to God and go be of service. Turn your thoughts to someone you can help. What can you do? Can you go wash a dish? Can you mow somebody's grass? Can you call an alcoholic? What can you go do? So she was willing. So she started praying for this woman on a Friday. Monday morning, I get a phone call, and it's from my sponsee. And I said, hey, what's going on? She said, you're not going to believe it. I said, what? She said, the woman turned in her resignation. So you see, if I will surrender it and let go of whatever it is, then God can do something with it, right? Now, then we get to the fourth and the fifth step. Now, I will tell you, fourth and fifth did not scare me. I love talking about me. I am my favorite subject. I'll talk about me all day long, right? But in that fourth step is where I discovered the resentments that I had had since my very first memory. My very first memory is I'm in kindergarten. I'm on the playground playing with the other kids, and everybody's going around talking about what their parents do for a living. And I said, well, I don't have a daddy, because that was just easier, right? Now, the truth was, my mother was a young mother. She got married right out of high school. She got pregnant. She married an alcoholic, drug addict biker who used to beat her. So when she was 6 months pregnant with me, he got a shotgun and threatened to kill her. So she called her daddy, my peepaw, to rescue us. And that's how we got in that small town in South Alabama, right? All of that's too complicated for 5-year-olds. It's just easier to say I don't have a daddy. My second resentment came when I was 8 years old. Now, back in the day, they used to take the whole class to the school library. And you'd be in the library and you would take turns, and you would go to this table and you would sit in front of a little machine, and there's a little lady sitting across over there, and they put headphones on you, and it was a hearing test. And so whenever you heard the beeps, you were supposed to raise your hand. Well, I never raised my hand. Come to find out, I had something called nerve deafness. Back then, they did not believe putting hearing aids on children. What they did do was they put me on the special ed list the rest of my school life. I always had to sit in the front of the classroom, because they discovered the reason why it had gone so long without being diagnosed is I am an excellent lip reader. So I needed to sit in front of the classroom so I could see the teacher's lips, which means I couldn't sit with my friends in the back of the classroom. I also had to go to speech therapist twice a week, right? Okay. So my third resentment also came when I was 8 years old. I told you my mother was a young mother. She was a single mother most of my life. But when I was 8, she decided that she wanted to go back to college and better herself and get her degree. So she sat me down. We're living with Mima and Peepaw, and she sat me down and she gave me a choice that I could stay there and live with Mima and Peepaw, or I could move 4 hours away with her. I never knew what I was going to get when I moved off with Mama, whoever she was married to at the time. They were not always pleasant experiences. But Mima and Peepaw was my safe place. That's the home we always came back to. We live 5 miles outside of town. We're in the country. I've got a pond. We've got woods. My aunt and uncle and their farm is right across the road. They've got a pond. They've got woods. All my cousins are there. My grandparents and great grandparents live right up the road. This is the town that I go to school in and dance in and sing in and go to church in. I chose to stay there, and my mother left me. Now I'm going to skip ahead to the age of 12. I heard a speaker say one time, if we could keep children from turning 12 and being raised in Southern Baptist churches, we'd have a lot fewer alcoholics. And that was certainly true in my case. So 3 things happened the year that I turned 12. The first was the day I learned how to lie. And I was a very busy child. I know today, looking back, I was an overachiever, trying to escape the environment in which I had been placed. I was in every kind of singing ensemble, show, choir, church choir, youth ensemble, band, marching band, symphonic band, jazz band, so on, all of that, right? So what that looked like was Mima would pick me up from school and I'd change clothes in the back of her car and we'd go off to where we were going. Well, on this particular day, our signals got crossed. So for 2.5 hours, I didn't know where Mima was and she didn't know where I was. And I knew when she did find me, it was going to be god awful. Because see, that was back in the days, there was no DHR or Child Protective Services to call. You got your butt beat. And what that looked like in my house was you had to go outside and pick a switch. And if it didn't have enough to it, Mima would have to pick your switch, and God help you if Mima had to pick it, right? So she did. She beat me so bad that day I had blood running down my legs. Now, I called my mama and I told her what Mima had done. And my mama drove the 4 hours south and sat across from that kitchen table. And she told my Mima, she said, you will never lay another hand on my child as long as you live. And I will tell you that Mima kept that promise. But there was lots of days that I wish she'd just beat me. Because withholding love from a child and that kind of silent scorn was so much worse. That day I learned to CYA. I was going to do whatever I had to do to not ever get beat like that ever again. I told a lie when the truth was good enough, and I became a master at my craft. Second thing that happened was I love to go fishing with my peepaw, right? And I love my Mima and peepaw, but sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and Mima and peepaw would be sitting there arguing in their underwear, and it would put fear in me, right? And so that scared me. So one day, Peepaw and I are out there fishing on our pond, and we start talking. And I said, well, Peepaw, why don't you just get a divorce? Mama does it all the time, right? I didn't think anything about that. Not too long later, I came home and Mima had been crying and Peepaw had been crying. And I never seen them crying before. And Peepaw pats that lap and he says, here, honey, come sit down. And he brings that conversation to mind. And he says, do you remember what you said that day? And I said, yes, sir. I said, why don't you get a divorce? And he says, well, we are. Oh my God, Amanda, why did you say that out loud? Oh my God, you said that out loud. You put the idea in his head and now he's getting a divorce. Oh my God, it's all your fault that me, mom, people are getting a divorce. Why did you say that out loud, right? Now, the reality of that situation was Peepaw had started having an affair with my Meemaw's married best friend, who divorced her husband, married my Peepaw, and they built a house across the pond that Meemaw could see out her kitchen window the rest of her natural life. Now, the third thing that happened that year, Mama had always told me that when I turned 12, if I wanted to, I could find my real father. I had one picture of them. It was them on their wedding day. There he is in a suit and a short military haircut, really tall and skinny. They call him Slim. He had one blue eye, one green eye. And he's cute. I could see why she married him. You know, I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe I do want to find him. Maybe he's rich and can take me somewhere exotic like California, right? Yes, Mama, let's go find my real daddy. So she starts making phone calls. Lo and behold, he's living in his mama's basement. That should have been clue number one. So me and Mama and my favorite aunt traipse up to Tennessee, and I meet my grandma, I meet my grandpa, and we're sitting there. And look, I'm from a small town. Everybody looks like us, talks like us, right? And all of a sudden I hear this noise I'd never heard before, and it comes pulling up that driveway, and I'd never heard that noise. And I look out the window and there's a woolly booger sitting on a motorcycle, and it gets off the motorcycle and it's got a beard down to its belly. It's got hair down to its butt. It is covered in tattoos. This one says F off, the whole thing. And I had never even heard anybody say that, let alone seen it in ink on somebody's body. And it comes in the door and it says, well, aren't you going to hug your old man? No, that was the other half of me. He wasn't taking me nowhere, and I needed a drink. And it wasn't long after that incident that I had that first conscious drink of alcohol. So also in that 4th step, I wrote about the behaviors that I had been doing and the things that I had been doing. And when I got done with that first 5th step on that back porch of that clubhouse, and Gloria comes over there and she hugs me and tells me she loves me, I had my first spiritual experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. First time I had felt unconditional love since my big mama had passed away. Now, then we get to step 6 and 7, and that's the steps that scared me to death. Oh my God, I did not want to do 6 and 7. I did not know if I was going to be willing to let any of these go away, because she's calling them character defects, and these are my survival skills. You don't understand. If I had not done these things and behaved these ways, I would not be alive today. And you're asking me to let all of those go, and I'm not willing to let all of those go. And Gloria said, Amanda, look, it ain't going to be like that. God's not going to snatch your skin off your body with all your character defects. She said, he'll probably start working on 1 or 2. Would you be willing to work on and be ready to let go of 1 or 2? And I said, yes, ma'am, I'm willing. And what do you know? She's right. The first thing God started working me on was telling the truth, because it was just such a habit. It would just roll out of my mouth, lie, story. And I'd be talking to somebody before the meeting and I would tell a lie. And I'd have to walk across the clubhouse. Gloria, I just told Harley Bill a lie. Well, walk back over there and tell him you told a lie and tell him the truth. I have to walk back across the clubhouse, right? And then I did not need any more silverware from Waffle House. Stop stealing, and stop stealing money out of my Mima's purse, right? She'll give it to you. Just ask her. 8 and 9, I made the list. I started making those amends. And as I was making those amends, I began to realize somewhere in there that the power that I had been praying to was real. Because that's the only way you could explain how some of these amends were going. I felt the nearness of that creator. My other little Miss Peggy used to say in step 10, we get contacted, right? We have to continue. We continue to take inventory. When we're wrong, promptly admit it. Well, look, when I first got sober, promptly might mean 3 to 4 months, right? Now it's like 3 to 4 minutes. I can't stand it. I can't stand the way it feels on me, right? And I will share with you that continue to take personal inventory. For a lot of my sobriety early on, I did it wrong. That upon awakening, and when we retire at night, y'all, that's step 11. Step 10 is during my awake hours. Am I feeling selfishness, angry, resentful, fearful, right? I have a list of women that I can call if I can't get my sponsor on the phone, and I am on other people's list as well if we need a quick 10th step. Well, what does that look like? What that looks like is, if I've got something going on at work, let's say I'm mad at so-and-so. Well, I hadn't called my sponsor about it, so I hadn't talked about it. And even though the 5th step says I got to tell another human being, I hadn't done that yet. So it's sitting here and it's in my mind. And now I'm having a conversation with that woman in my mind, which is a resentment, people, right? So now I've got a secret and now I've got a resentment. Well, at some point I become aware of that. Well, if I can't get my sponsor on the phone, then I'm going to call one of these women. Some things are going to happen. We may do a little mini 4 step right there. We may do a little 4 column. Let's get it out. Let's talk about it. We may do all 12 steps in 15 minutes. Let's talk it out. Let's get it out. Because what does it say in the 5th step? God, ourselves, and another human being. Not the oak tree in the field. Not the ocean. Not your dog. Another human being, right? Because here's what I know. If I'm not telling, number one, I got a secret. Oh, let me tell you, long-term sobriety, if I start saying, oh, I don't need to bother her with this. Woo, I've got 27 years sober. I should be able to handle this. Woo, danger, Will Robinson. Those are red flags in my world, right? I need to tell it. Because if I'm not telling it, it's making a little dark spot in my soul. And I don't want dark spots in my soul. And when I tell it and get it out of me and take care of it, then light can come in, right? That sunlight of the spirit can get in my soul, right? So then we get to step 11, and I seek through prayer and meditation. And I will tell you, when I first got sober, there was a whole table of books in the back of that clubhouse. And it might be Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, or it might be Fulton Alls, or it might be Emmett Fox, Sermon on the Mount. or it might be Sam's shoemaker I stand at the door, right? Whatever it was, them old timers taught me to go back there and seek, right? Sometimes people seek through music. Sometimes people seek through church. So I was taught to seek early on, to not limit how the God of my experience might want to communicate with me. That meditation stuff, that kind of freaked me out in the beginning. I really thought I had to cross my legs, light a candle, do my hands like this and go, right? And I knew I couldn't do that. Thank God for that little 24-hour day book. Gloria would say, Amanda, will you just be willing to read the middle part? Well, yes, ma'am, I can do that. And I would do that. She said, okay, now I want you to read the middle part, and I want you to add the prayer at the end. Okay, I can do that, right? Then one time I had a mentor, this teacher in Tallahassee. He said, Amanda, get your big book. All right, got my big book. He said, let it fall open. Okay, let it fall open. He said, now, find you some sentences on a page and read 2 or 3 of them sentences. Okay, I'd read 2 or 3 of them sentences. He says, now, just spend a few minutes thinking about those sentences. What did that used to mean to you? What does that mean to you today? Is there any way you could apply that in your life? Right? That's a whole nother level of meditation, right? I love to meditate in the wilderness. I love to hike. That is, or walk on the beach. Oh my God. If you follow me on any social media, I'm posting that all the time, right? I had a dear friend say one time, keep seeking until you find places where you feel the nearness of your creator. And when you find those places, go back there often, right? So that's what I try to do today. And for anybody who says they can't meditate, let me tell you something. That is a lie you are telling yourself. Every human being on the planet knows how to worry, and worry is negative meditation. So I'm inviting you to flip it. Try to find a positive way, right? I love to make a gratitude list. Look, I'll be going into Winn-Dixie. Thank you, God, for that produce right there. Thank you, God, for that cantaloupe. Thank you, God, for that young man right there putting that produce out for me. Thank you, God, for whoever stopped these shelves last night. Thank you, God, for Winn-Dixie. Thank you, God, it's open today, right? Thank you, God, for buggies, so I don't have to come in here and try to carry out. Okay. Anytime we're making a gratitude list, thank you is one of the biggest prayers we can say, right? So meditation can look however you would like for it to look. It's a conversation. Right? Okay, so let me share. Why do I say the God of my experience? Thank you. So, and one of the reasons why I say God of my experience, years ago, I was studying and meditating on the words, God as we understand him, God as we understood him. Okay. And as I was meditating on those words, I began to realize that I will never understand God. More than that, why would I want to? Why would I want to put God in a box where my limited human mind can understand him? I need something bigger than my understanding. The book says when calamities come, not if. And I've got calamities coming. And I need to get God out of the Milky Way where I'd had him for a lot of my sobriety. And I needed that power to be right here, right now, right now. And so Creator began to bring to mind different experiences that I had had. There was an experience I had with a lady in Maine. There was an experience I had on the beach. There was an experience I had at a Buddhist temple garden. There was an experience I had at a Catholic adoration chapel. I had an experience over here in a Native American sweat lodge. And there was an experience I had with that lady at the conference. I will never forget that. As I'm realizing and perceiving and remembering those memories and those experiences, what comes to mind is those are my experiences. Those are times when I felt the power and the nearness of my Creator. It was real. And I don't have to get in a theological discussion with you about my experiences. They're mine. And then in step 12, I've had my spiritual awakening as the result of working these 12 steps, right? And then I'm supposed to carry the message. My sponsor said, look, are you carrying the mess or are you carrying the message? When the chairperson brings the topic in that closed or open discussion meeting, do I have experience with that topic? Do I have experience where I got through that without drinking and I can share that? Or am I whining about my day? I'm supposed to practice these principles in all my affairs. Is this newcomer just come up? Did she hear me gossiping about some of y'all right outside the meeting? And ooh, you noticed that one was wrong for wearing that in here tonight, right? After the meeting, does she see me hitting on some of those young men, knowing that I'm a married woman? When I'm in a conference, going to a conference with a car full of women, and I've got I used to say people cut me off, but that wasn't as realistic as this one right here. I got a slow driver in the left lane on I-10, and I can't get around them. Do they hear me cussing and fussing and throwing up some sign language? Or do they hear me saying, I hope you get to where you're going safely. God bless you. Ladies, we need to pray for this guy over here. Right? My sponsor told me one time, she said, Amanda, you may be the only example of a big book somebody ever gets to see. Are you going to be a good example or a bad example? Right? How am I putting that out there? Today I get to wake up every morning and thank God for waking me up and say, God, what are you up to today and how can I be a part of it? And there's never enough time to talk about all the miracles because I think I have 4 minutes left. Oh my gosh. So I will close with this. The last 31 years of my life, 31, 32. 32. Oh, the last 32 years of my life have been rich and meaningful. I've had my share of problems, heartaches, and disappointment because that is life. But also I have known a great deal of joy and a peace that is the handmaiden of an inner freedom. I have a wealth of friends, and with my AA friends, an unusual quality of fellowship. For to these people, I am truly related. First, through mutual pain and despair, and later through mutual objectives and newfound faith and hope. And as the years go by, working together, sharing our experiences with one another, and also sharing a mutual trust, understanding, and love, without strings, without obligation. We acquire relationships that are unique and priceless. There is no more aloneness with that awful ache, so deep in the heart of every alcoholic that nothing before could ever reach it. That ache is gone and need never return again. Now there is a sense of belonging, of being wanted and needed and loved. In return for a bottle and a hangover, we have been given the keys of the kingdom. My name is Amanda Brown. I'm a grateful alcoholic. Thank you for letting me share.